Hey everybody, it's Ryan at Ripping One Handed on Twitter. Welcome, if you haven't been here before. Welcome back, if you have. I thought today I would take a few minutes and talk about grading, all right? I don't know if I've talked about this before. There's some hubbub online today about the rose gold Wander Franco logo, fractor, one of one, being graded by CSG. And people saying, who cares? That's stupid. I love it. I mean, the whole spectrum of responses are there. And it kind of proves the point, which is my main point is, and I've always maintained this, that grading, ultimately, at its core, is and always will be subjective. Bottom line. You can have any amount of computers involved that you want. Ultimately, it comes down to someone, first of all, they need to program those for whatever things they're measuring, but ultimately it comes down to a person looking at a card under a microscope or what, however they do it, and judging how sharp are the corners, every one of them, how sharp are the edges, what's the surface look like on the front and the back. Centering might be the only one that you could make a case that it isn't subjective, that you could objectively say. But even when you're saying like 40, 60, I guess there are machines they could judge that on, right? But ultimately, again, someone is looking at them and judging what is a 9 corner, what's a 10 corner, what's an 8 corner, what's a 6 corner, right? What are the edges, and we've all had, anybody who has submitted cards, now granted, I've not done a ton. I had a friend submit, I think 4 John Morant rookie cards to PSA, which all came back 10s, which are awesome. But I've only submitted to SGC. Feel like I've had pretty good luck there, but even that, I've had some that 10'd that I didn't think would 10, some that got less than a 10 that I thought for sure were 10s, right? I haven't been that far off. I think the only one, I grabbed a few of them here. I think this is the only one that I was like way far off, and I still think that this is a bad grade. So it's a Josh Sargent Optic rookie auto, graded an 8.5, makes 0 sense to me. I mean, I've looked at this 10 times, whatever. There's no way it's an 8.5. But it is. It literally is an 8.5, right? And we've all been there. We've had that done. This one, I didn't think had any shot at a 10. And yet, we've got a Luka that I had sitting in a box, not even in a sleeve, since I pulled it back in, whatever, how many years ago was that? 6 years ago? Something like that? And that 10. Right? I also have this Peyton Manning Chrome Refractor from 2000 that I, again, was like in just a regular sleeve, not even a top loader. And that came back in 9 from SGC, which is the highest one in their registry, in their pop report. Made me kind of want to break it open and send it to PSA. Because I was like, wow, that for sure is like a 9.5. Whatever, right? We've got some Tom Brady's here that graded 9s, a rookie and a second year, third year, I guess. Steph Curry, same situation, pulled a 9.5 out of that guy. This Herbert right here, I believe, I didn't think had any chance at getting a 10, but grabbed a 10, right? And then I've got like a Ja and a Zion, which look nearly identical. Za and Giant. 9.5 and a 10 on those guys. And then this one, which I was just super happy about. I pulled this one myself. Hank Aaron out of Stadium Club. It was number 1 of 5. And got a 10 on it. And this one was just for me. I'm not ever selling this one because it was super fun to pull. But it just shows, like, and we've all seen that. We've all watched ones where we're like, there's no way that's a 10. And it doesn't matter the company. Could be a PSA, SGC, CSG, Beckett, whoever. We've all seen that where we're like, there's no way that's a 10. Oh, what? There's no way that's an 8 or a 9 or whatever. And it's subjective. But then you have, I guess the other point, I've been kind of going back and forth on Twitter with a couple guys who are clearly CSG fans. And they're saying that it doesn't matter for a 1 of 1 because it doesn't affect the value anyway. It's the only one you have. They have no other options, etc., etc. In theory, I understand that. I do get that. But if I'm a PSA fan and I don't like CSG, well, now I've eliminated that person from the pool of people who would buy my card, right? This person said, well, I mean, just submit it to PSA and get a 10. You're not guaranteed that. You can't just submit it and get a 10. That isn't how grading works. Like, so just buy the CSG, and if you want it in a PSA slab so bad, crack it open and send it in. Right, but there's risk involved in that you're not going to get a 10. That's why someone who prefers PSA would want the assurance that it's already gotten a 10 from them, not CSG. And then you have people saying, well, they grade harder anyway. It's easier to get a 10 from PSA than it is from any of these other companies. And I want to explore that a little bit because they kept referring to the pop reports. Pop reports, pop reports, pop reports, pop reports. Here's the thing with pop reports and why they don't really prove anything. People submit cards to different companies for different reasons, right? So if I have vintage cards, typically people value SGC for vintage. These are just general statements. Not everyone does, but in general, that's what you see. Modern, PSA, right? Also, generally recognized, PSA gets you the most bang for your buck, right? They sell the highest. Now, this one person used the Mickey Mantle and 2 Honus Weigers that were graded by SGC and the 3 top selling cards ever in history as his example that it doesn't matter. That actually isn't true. Like, you don't know that. Someone who preferred PSA may have paid more. We don't know. You can't know that. And then just looking at percentages and stuff, again, because it's subjective, if a card has a ton of 10s and a ton of 9s at PSA, those either one could flip. They're making the point that, well, these other companies have a 9.5, and so it's easier to get a 10 at PSA because they don't even have a 9.5. Well, then you're assuming that they default to saying, well, it would be a 9.5, but since we don't have that, we'll give it a 10. I can't imagine that would be their default. Now, it might be for some graders, it might not be for others. Again, it's so subjective, you don't know that. So half of those 9s, half of those 10s with PSA could be flip-flopped. You don't know, right? And so saying it's easier to get a 10 at CSG or SGC or PSA or Beckett or whatever, it doesn't make any sense. Also, PSA very clearly has the most cards submitted to them, right? And so there's a reason people are doing that. People aren't submitting cards by and large to get less than a 10, right? They want 10s. And so they're going to scrutinize the cards to make sure, hey, does this meet the criteria for a 10? I think it does. I'm going to send it in, right? I watch these guys online who are professionals, who do all this, have done this for decades, and they still get some back where they're like, this was not what I expected, right? I was watching Chris Sewell the other night. He gets his grades back and he goes and he says, this is what I thought they would get. What did they actually get, right? Many times it's either lower or the low end of what he thought. And so it isn't objective. It can't be. It is subjective. And so all of these arguments are so interesting and frustrating, if I'm being honest, because you can't prove it. There just isn't a way to prove it. So like with this Wander card, this 1 of 1, whoever buys it, right, they'll say, see, it didn't matter that it was a CSG holder. They paid that, and they would have paid that regardless of the holder it was in. First of all, you don't know that. And second of all, you don't know if there was someone else who would have paid more if it was in a different holder. There isn't a way to know. And so the argument is frustrating in that people present it as fact, and it just simply cannot be fact. It can't. The amount of variance, the amount of nuance, the amount of subjectivity, a guy could get a flat tire on his way to work and then his girlfriend breaks up with him at lunch. You think that afternoon session, we want to believe that it would be the same as any other day? It's not. Anyone who has a job knows those things affect your performance. They affect how involved you are in your work. Doesn't matter what you do. It does affect it. So if we were popping a card into a machine and the machine did its thing and popped out a grade, it would be a different story. That machine's not popping any tires. The machine's not getting dumped by its girlfriend, right? And so there's just a lot to think about. It's one of the reasons why I haven't really gotten into grading, I know that if you flip cards, it's a huge part of it, right? And I've done that with some of mine where I did it with the intention of selling. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I know a lot of guys who have submitted with the sole intention of selling and flipping because they knew if it graded high, it would give them more return, and then got grades back that didn't make it worth it, right? They ended up losing money. And so it's a dangerous place to be. Maybe dangerous isn't the right word, but it's certainly not objective. You can't predict anything, right? Why does one card from this company at this grade go for this much, and this card for this much for this grade? Like the whole thing, right? So I think when it comes down to it, I've heard this said a million times, so I don't know who to give credit to, but it's always, buy the card, not the grade, right? That's what they say. And I think that's true. We've all seen a 10 that looks like a 9 or an 8, and we've all seen an 8 that looks like a 9 or a 10. And so, if it's enjoyment that you're trying to get out of it and what it looks like, that sort of thing, the card itself, then do that. But otherwise, yeah, it's tough. It's a real, I don't know, the Wild West. I'm losing steam, but I think you get the point. I am curious what you think about these things. I think the thing that gets me the most is when things are presented as fact, right? When it just literally is not. And I don't use the word literally liberally. You can prove that a company has more 10s in their pop report, but that doesn't mean it's easier to get a 10, right? It means they've had more submitted that got 10s. Sure. Doesn't mean it's easier. So anyway, there's where we are. I thought I would just come on and kind of give that little spiel here. Not sure if I missed anything, probably did, but I'd be curious in your thoughts. Leave a comment below, like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not super invested into the grading arena because I don't have a ton of it. I don't do a lot of it, but that's just my perspective of someone looking at it kind of from the outside, which I think can be kind of helpful because most of the responses I'm getting are people who are graders, who are committed to a certain company for a certain reason, right? And so of course they're going to prop them up as the best or the hardest or whatever it is. So thanks for watching. Went a little bit longer than I thought, but I think I got it all in there. So thanks for stopping by. We'll do this again. Appreciate you. Bye.